beginning of this film, Kong's a lonely guy. He doesn't have any friends.
His species was a very social one. It's not natural for Kong to be so alone.
This film takes Kong on a journey from loneliness to inheriting the king in his name, King Kong.
Aggression is his love language.
We go deeper into Kong's perspective. We have evolutions to these characters.
He goes on a big journey this time around.
When we start this film, Kong is living in Hollow Earth. He's been eking out an existence there. He's alone, he's lonely.
He's the last of his kind. Every day he searches for a family that he'll never find.
Kong goes through a very major arc in this film. You know, now that he's in the right place in Hollow Earth, he realizes that there's nobody there for him to share it with.
He really goes on some soul-searching. And he gets to find other Kongs, including a child one.
Zuko is this young yet irascible ape, and Kong, who thought he was the last of his kind, has to learn how to almost be a surrogate father.
Zuko's cute, but he's also a jerk. He tries to kill Kong. He doesn't trust Kong. Why would he? So when he helps set this trap against Kong, you know, it's fair game.
At the heart of this movie is really two characters looking for their families.
So there's a sort of parallel going on between Kong and Gia and Andrews. The Kong-Gia relationship is still very strong and meaningful.
They're going through a very similar struggle. We have Gia's journey to discover that there's others of her kind, the iwi, and on the flip side of it, Kong's story, which he's also about to discover that there's others of his kind. But in his case, they're toiling away in this subterranean hellscape.
After being damaged in a battle, Kong has an upgrade that our human characters give him.
When I was trying to picture like what we could do with Kong in this movie, there's not as much you can do. Like with Godzilla, you can evolve him. Kong is still, you know, it's only a couple years removed from the last movie. How do you update him? And that's when we started thinking like, well, let's give him some sort of really cool mechanized update. So that's where Kong's beast glove comes from.
He's either going to love it or he's going to rip it off with his teeth.
I think he loves it!
One of the things that I enjoyed was the sort of silent film that you get when you spend time with Kong and the character that he was able to create. You know, there's about a third of the movie that is in that sort of space and is really wonderful to watch.
One of the very first conversations I had with the writers on this movie, I was like, what I want to do with this movie is I want to make a mainstream blockbuster movie that does not rely on dialogue. I wanted to do a nonverbal movie.
This is something that has been evolving, I think, in the last movie, but I think we really go much, much further within this one. It's more like a silent movie, almost. We're going to see Kong have relationships, get angry, crack a joke, be emotional, be moved, and we've seen him do those things, I think, before, but I think this is more nuanced, and it's also with other creatures.
The audiences are ready for a more immersive trip into the monster world. I can really stretch my imagination out and let these monsters tell their own story and take it to the next level. Kong can just be our hero and he can guide us through.
Through the film, Kong gets the help from Godzilla trying to rewrite the balance of Hollow Earth and hopefully make it the home that it should be for him. And at the end of the film, Kong, you know, this character who starts so lonely, ends up teaching not only Zuko, but he ends up teaching this whole tribe of great apes that there is another way, that there's a better way, that kindness and empathy really matter.
By the end of this movie, he comes into his own as King Kong. You know, the MonsterVerse has always held off on calling him King Kong, and that's because he hasn't been king. This is really the moment of him taking the throne. I mean, that's what this journey is really all about.
Skarking. Hey, what are you telling? Oh.
In thinking about all the different places on the planet, and specifically ones that we've never seen in any of these movies, it's always fun to find iconic imagery to juxtapose the Titans against.
We were looking for iconic places for Godzilla to roar, and it just seemed like there's nothing as iconic as the Rock of Gibraltar. We just had this great image that we started developing with Godzilla scrambling up to the top of the Rock of Gibraltar, giving his mighty roar. And then from there, it morphed into, we've never seen Godzilla jump off of anything into the water.
In his new form, you're trying to find things for him to do that you've never seen, and we've never seen Godzilla take a big dive like that before, so the natural place for that is going to be the Rock of Gibraltar. I mean, this movie, I think we shot in 7 or 8 different countries. It was important to us to really go to a lot of these places and get real photography there. Alessandro, the VFX supervisor, he also doubled his second unit, and he went out to Gibraltar.
And of course, The Rock was shot in Gibraltar. I went there and shot from the helicopter and from the ground. And then from there, it takes us to Cairo.
At the beginning of the film, we established that Godzilla's on the surface and Kong is below in Hollow Earth, and as long as they stay in their own territories, there'll be no problem. But later in the film, Kong realizes he has to go up and bring Godzilla down to Hollow Earth.
Godzilla won't come down here unless Kong brings him.
Okay, the last time those two met up, it was almost the end of Kong.
That, of course, leads to a huge fight between Kong and Godzilla amongst the pyramids in Egypt.
There aren't very many ancient structures on Earth that are of the scale of Godzilla and Kong, so the pyramids seem like a no-brainer.
And so naturally, when it came time to develop this movie, I was like, wouldn't it be great if Godzilla and Kong are just completely destroying thousands of years of antiquity very casually during the course of their fight?
There's a great beat in the Egypt battle.
Kong does the sort of cheap move of throwing sand up and getting in Godzilla's eyes.
Yeah, well, you know, I like that Kong can fight a little dirty. I think it's always really cool in movies where characters utilize their setting to give them some sort of, even if it's a brief advantage.
And this just enrages Godzilla.
And Adam has been really great at bringing almost WWE-like moves into these fights.
The Egypt fight really is not about winning or losing. This isn't a rematch. This isn't a Godzilla versus Kong 2, because Kong's not going there to win. He's matured past that. He's going there because he needs Godzilla to help him.
They know Godzilla is preparing to fight Shimo and Skarking on the surface, but Kong knows that if he can bring Godzilla down, they can stop them from ever reaching the surface in the first place.
That's obviously not going that well. luckily Mothra comes in to save the day and to call the truce. And there's just such a shorthand with Mothra because we all know that Godzilla and Mothra sort of have this understanding, this unspoken bond that they've always had.
Mothra goes up in the pyramid and she tells Godzilla that he has to help Kong to defeat the Scar King.
The Egypt fight, to me, it's an homage to any city. If Godzilla and King Kong destroy it, that's like their way of paying respect to it in real life. It's an honor to have Godzilla and Kong destroy something.
Now I have seen everything.
The Rio sequence is a ton of fun to develop. We knew we wanted a major brawl at the end of this film in a major city.
Everything you don't think of when you think of Rio is what we wanted to approach with this wonderful finale.
You can't make a monsterverse movie without destroying a city.
When we were trying to come up with where the final action scene in this movie would take place, we listed out every single major city and the pros and the cons and what we could do that's unique to this film.
You're always trying to decide how to put a third act together. We were sitting looking at a world map and we go, we have done Hong Kong in the last film, Boston's been used, San Francisco's been used, Las Vegas has been used. I can't remember who suggested it, but all of a sudden we're like, well, we've never been to South America before in one of these films.
We landed on Rio because there's a nice iconography to Rio. You're always trying to juxtapose the Titans with iconic locations, and the Jesus statue is such a signature thing, so I just felt like the right place to take them ultimately.
So the Rio scene, I would say, is the second part of the big finale, where like the beach girls are having a good time, and then eventually the water starts to freeze.
Adam wanted to approach it in a way to allow for a really unique action sequence in giving Shimo this water freezing power. How does it allow us to do a great action sequence when all of a sudden the ocean's frozen?
Camera set and action.
We were fortunate enough to be able to shoot this film all over the world. We shot primarily in the Gold Coast in Australia.
We were able to double the iconic Surfers Paradise Beach for some moments in Rio de Janeiro.
We shot a lot of groundwork with extras where the people started running away from monsters.
But we also did shoot in Rio. We had a unit in Rio shooting a lot of the plates for the action pieces that you see within the film.
We shot plates in Iceland, Hawaii, and even Rio. We're getting all these different environments, and I think that that's really important nowadays. There's just something to a film that has a real feeling of travel to it, taking you to places that you've never been. And even though some of the places we're taking the audiences are totally fantasy, we want them to feel grounded in a way. And so utilizing real locations and those kind of things is a way of doing that.
This major final battle in Rio, it starts at Panama Beach, so on the ocean, on the beach, and then we get into the city and destroying a few buildings.
We're seeing these four characters come together. It allowed for us to really spotlight the agility of Scar King.
I knew right out the gate that I wanted a nemesis for Kong, another ape, but would be more agile than Kong. I wanted something that was more lanky. He's like the Bizarro Kong. He's everything that Kong's not. Knowing that you can actually believably make these big monsters have weapons, I instantly knew I wanted Scar King to have some sort of whip type thing, and the idea that he's taken some sort of spinal cord off a creature and he's turned it into a whip.
Shimo has this super strong breath that can freeze everything, and he also hurts Kong, and she's massive.
Shimo's sort of this weapon of mass destruction. She's so powerful, she can basically destroy the planet.
It's always cool to send our titans on the surface and destroy some cities and scare the people.
There was just something kind of exciting about the ultimate battle with a big ice titan and putting that in a famously warm, sunny place.
We were able to do this incredible sequence in Rio, shooting it in a way you've never seen it.
It was a challenging one to figure out, but with Shimo and her ice breath and Scar King and Kong and the sheer power of Godzilla, it's a city battle like we haven't seen before.